don't. Every single time he walks up to you, not to me. You've noticed that.
Oh, I thought that
I'm
was
just like,
I'm not saying, but I was. Well, I can't see. So I was just gonna say, just for the presentation. Yeah. You're gonna come right down, right at time. Yeah, I'll sit with you. We're gonna sit out here so you can see the presentations. Y'all all three sit here and then we'll bring you up. And y'all just kind of like stand up and wait. I don't know what else. We want to be able to see.
my mom says that.
My students will show up
Yes.
probably around 5:31. Or 5. I mean, oh Lord, this is fun. No, that's the way it is. Same thing. Oh, totally. Oh my God. Totally. Classes is
No.
40. Not 45. Sometimes 50. Rolling. When he came in, they're like, "Oh, change," and he's like, "You told me." I'm like, "Well, really?" She come to class. And she'd be like, "Here's her, all these people in second year." You get I'll give you
yeah, she was like,
I'm like just talking about like
Don't
the
pick
students that are here early. You get 100, when you get 100.
Amen. I thought it was
I
good.
swear, I hate whenever that happens when I'm like reading. This
How do we praise the ones that we did?
I mean, I'll say something and I'm like,
And the ones that
and then that's why like you'll be like, whenever I'm like, wait, what did I just say? Like, did I sound okay? Because I don't even remember. Yeah, I don't remember what I said, and I feel like I'm just like stumbling every time. I noticed this.
this is hard.
Notice the typography. Perspective. I'm like, I don't even know what's a yeah. I'm like,
When you're gonna get files and stuff.
oh, best believe the other day when I said next to me, I was like, yeah. I walked in, he asked me, he said, no, dude. I was like,
What are we talking about?
it was a dude.
Oh, right. I think where I went wrong, they were saying how many people this year I bought and I drank the full page and I did what they asked me to do and it wasn't right.
There's no way this is to me.
Say yes to everything. That's what my mom always said. Say yes to every opportunity. It's like, that got me into some trouble. Like, and it's fine. It's kind of hard to me. It's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
That's true. Yeah, that's. I agree. But that's why I should have left. Yeah. I'm gonna have to cut person. That's the right house, you know. As they should. I mean, they're like, no. We're like, no. I know you see it. Do you teach like the one-on-one ones?
Because it can't all just be drawing. I mean, you have to actually take real classes. You have to take some math, some science.
No, you got it right.
I didn't know it was permanent. I didn't for all the way
Kelly has some housekeeping.
Just one note, no midterm grades were due today. I entered them in yesterday. If you have any questions or any concerns, or you think I made a mistake, you can email me, ctbloom@bueno.edu. I'm happy to check on your attendance. Also, there will be opportunities in the next week and the week after to make up an absence, so I can also let you know how many you missed, so how many you make up. Please attend the rest of the forums if you got that at risk of failing email, but please don't panic. Email me if you have any questions about it, okay? Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. What do I start up? Sorry, I'm a little early now. It's all good. We're gonna clear that. All right, so good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to see all the students. Loyola Design alumni are here in the house, in our design community. We are so excited about tonight's special design forum. We've been experimenting with what happens in design forums since the pandemic. We now have lectures, games, tutorials, studio time. I don't know how much they like all of the above, but tonight we have decided to have a panel discussion on experimental collaging and the process of making. The idea for experimental collage panel discussion blossomed this summer when I attended Collage Fest in the Marigny. Image making is a big part of being a designer, and my colleague and former Loyola faculty, Nancy Bernardo, who now teaches at University of Rochester, invited me to an event where many collage artists shared their work. That weekend I met Jill Stoll, who teaches at Tulane University, and Laurie O'Brien, who teaches at Rochester Institute of Technology. Tonight, Laurie, Jill, and Nancy will share their work for approximately 10 minutes. We will move to these comfy chairs and have a living room type conversation with the audience for the remaining time. The goals for this forum is to inspire all of us, including me, to experiment more, see different processes of making, and expand our understanding of collage. Please welcome all panelists, Laurie O'Brien, Jill Stoll, and Nancy Bernardo. Our first speaker will be Laurie O'Brien.
Hi everyone, thank you Daniela for inviting us here. We are so excited to be here and it's nice to meet you all. Thank you for coming. I'm mostly going to talk about my process in this 10 minutes, but I specialize in collage and motion. But it doesn't really start with motion. I really start with a lot of analog and handmade collage processes, and then that leads to, almost always leads to a motion piece. But I wanted to kind of take you through a little bit of my process. All right, so first I want to talk to you a little bit about community, which is really important to me in my collage making and in my art making practice. And I met Nancy really through the art of collage. And Nancy and I were both in Rochester, and we met each other and discovered that we both love collage and included into our work, but in very different ways. And so we started something called the Rochester Diorama and Collage League in Rochester, and basically we invited our students, other people's students, teachers to come to a community center and just get together and make collage, have fun, and play. And so this kind of started off something. I also belong to another collage and diorama league in San Francisco, where I'm from, and we call it the CDL. and it's another group of people meeting informally in our house, getting together and sharing information. And this group also has a kind of side group that puts together collage events and gallery openings and does a lot of mail art also. And I've been doing that for about 10 years. But I think most importantly was that Nancy told me about Collage Fest here in New Orleans. And I'm putting this up here just to give it a plug. It's going to be in New Orleans this summer from June 7th to 11th. And it's fantastic. And this is where I met Jill. And so there's a lot of events at Collage Fest. You can Google it and find out more information. If you do any kind of motion work, they have an open call right now to have your film screened. And this is the last day of Collage Fest at the Aloft Hotel. And I wanted to show you this slide because there's lots of different workshops and things you can do, but my favorite thing is just that everyone kind of comes together wherever the hotel is that is hosting it, and you can show up at any time and just collage with people. And so it's a really fun time for any of you who are interested in this. It's right here in New Orleans. So I want to talk a little bit about my process. My process really starts with using archives. Now I've been working with an archive called the Soibelman Syndicate News Archive, and it's in Rochester. Somebody donated a lot of photographs to this organization called Visual Studies Workshop, and Visual Studies Workshop is a wonderful place, and they said as long as you give us credit, you can use any of these images. And so I went through 40,000 of these images, mostly from the 20s, 30s, and 40s. The images were from a news archive all around the world, and I just kind of picked out different images that I loved. I then scanned them, I photoshopped them and cut them out. I look for images often that have really strong gestures because I think about animating them later. And I also, at this point in my process, I was looking for images of people who looked like they were on devices like cell phones, but they really weren't. Obviously, she's reading a book or something, but I was looking specifically on a treasure hunt for these kind of images that comes up in my work. And then Visual Studies Workshop let me use a room that's called the project space, where I could really experiment with kind of images. And I was, at this point, I knew it was going to be a film, but I really needed like the whole room to kind of play around and spread out a little bit so I could really think in that three-dimensional space. And so here's some images of just some collages that I was playing with on the wall using strings. And I also was working with a poet who would kind of give me some prompts with different words and language that really helped inspire me. And so these are my final collages that I finally, after playing around a lot, I came up with these. And then I made a film from all of those still images. And when I make a film, before I do it, I go from kind of analog to digital. And I scan everything in and separate the parts and layers. Mostly I use After Effects.
Nothing scientific, it's purely personal. A scene from out here, Everything seems different. Time bends, space is omnipresent. It squashes a man's ego. Time bends. Everything seems different. Time bends. Everything seems different. Time bends. Everything seems I feel I feel I feel I feel
Alright, so that's my film project. And the last thing I want to talk to y'all about is something also that was born at Collage Fest, and that is working with collage street art. And I want to give a shout out to a New Orleans wonderful person named Christopher Karks, who works with Collage Fest. And he put together this book recently called Wallflowers, Collage with Street Art. And during Collage Fest, the very first or second one, I guess it was the second one that I went to. I think there's been 4 or 5 now. I wrote that I wanted to work with people who were doing kind of street art and collage. And so I went around New Orleans and we called ourselves the Collage Street Crew. And we all use that same tag on Instagram. And we just found like really interesting places to add collage. And it was the most magical experience. Whenever I go to a new city now, I love to put very small, tiny collages around the city. And I say this because you could make them. Some people had a bigger idea about it, but I'm always afraid of getting busted. So I do it very small in really tiny places. And I feel like this makes like cities magical, and it also makes visiting cities so much fun because you're kind of on a treasure hunt for little spaces. And so this is all the images I'm showing you are from New Orleans when I was here, and we were doing this as a group and we call ourselves Collage Street Crew. And then when I got back to Rochester, I started just using the environment more. I was really inspired. And so those are paper, cutout paper, computers. As you can see, there's a lot of like interaction with technology. And then I started using photographs of myself and cutting them out and kind of playing around. This was during COVID. This is what I did during COVID. And I'm just really interested in kind of the intersection between the digital and the analog. And so that's a lot of my work addresses that. So that's it. I don't know if you all can see this, but I just want to encourage everybody to go to Collage Fest if you're into collage. It's so much fun. Also, I put together a collage and motion directory. If you want to take a picture of this, I don't know if you can see it very well, but the collage and motion directory is part of Collage magazine, and there's a lot of other collage artists on there. a fantastic directory, so you can look at that and be inspired by other artists and what they're doing with collage in motion. And then finally, if you're interested in working with an archive, a Soibelman News Archive is available digitally. And then I think there's some other my Instagram links. So that's it for today. I would like to say thank you. And next up is Jill Stoll.
Laurie O'Brien is magical. Laurie O'Brien's process is magical, and she herself is magical. Do you agree with me?
Yeah.
So cool. And so, how are you doing? Are you feeling a little restless?
Yes.
Feeling like you want to get on your cell phone? Feeling that way? You want to get on your cell phone? No, yeah, because it's been about 5 minutes or so, or 30 seconds since you last touched it. So I'm here to present a ridiculous idea of why not reach for a sketchbook instead of your cell phone. It's crazy. I love these. Don't get me wrong. This isn't, I know, you're having a nervous breakdown back there. Can't imagine your life without this, but I'm restless too. I get restless, and I want to get on something. And I get bored really fast. So I created this little bag of activities for myself. And in this bag is a cell phone size sketchbook. And I carry it with me, and if I get someplace early, like the dentist office, or if I go to the doctor's office, instead of getting them on my phone, and I basically do 3 things on my phone, which is check Instagram, check my email, and text my friends. Why not be more interesting and work on my sketchbook? Why not? Let's just think about it. I know it's a ridiculous ask, but let's talk about sketchbooks for a minute. So in here are pens. It's like a little activity bag for the inner child that is Jill. She's like 6 or 7, and she's restless and she gets bored. So this is for her. And that happened a couple of years ago, like before COVID. I thought I'm really bored just looking at my cell phone doing the same 3 things I do all the time. I see some people in the back on their cell phones, so it's perfect. They're not listening. There's a guy back there, he's not listening, he's on his cell phone. So what I wanted to tell you about is I always start with collage first. So you might be wondering about how this fits into collage. But as a collage artist, I have a lot of scraps in my studio. And all those scraps are sacred. You don't throw anything out when you're a collage artist, am I right? We're hoarders, I can admit that. So I collect all of the scraps in my studio and I start to put them into my sketchbook. And then I can draw on it. Whoops. So I don't want to be like these people. This is too normal. And if you're normal, it's kind of boring, right? So imagine if we just took that cell phone and replaced it with a sketchbook, you'd be like, what's that person? Okay, so I want to tell you the story of a sketchbook. And it goes back to 1988. You guys were not born in 1988, am I right? Yeah. So I did study abroad my sophomore year of college. And I don't know how I did it, and when I look back on it, I don't know really how I did it because I was a sophomore and usually study abroad is for juniors, but I somehow convinced my school to let me go. And then for some reason my parents let me go, but what they didn't know at the time was that the UK was really a dangerous place. And there had been a bombing 4 years before in Brighton by the Provisional IRA, which is the Irish Republican Army, and they were fighting for rights in Northern England. So I would go, it was in Brighton, it was south. It was considered a really progressive, kind of open-minded city. And I would go up to London all the time, and just by myself, I was 19, and get on the subway, you could buy a ticket from Brighton to London, and just spend the whole day on the tube, going around to museums and seeing things, and it was really great. I met a friend there. Here we are in 2016, remember? I met her in 1988. We're still friends today. And when I first met Sarah, I was compelled by her sketchbook. So I walked into the studio. It was a textile design studio. And everybody had a sketchbook that looked like this. Everybody had a sketchbook. They were doing their senior year. They were all working on their thesis projects. And I've always thought about this sketchbook just spilling out with tons of stuff in it, things that Sarah was talking about. So I was teaching in Rome in 2011, and I said, Sarah, would you bring that sketchbook? Remember that sketchbook you had your senior year at college and your thesis project? Could you bring it to me? I've been thinking about it for 20 years. Can you bring it and let me look at it? So I did, and I photographed it. And it was this rich story of her thesis project. And every single student had a sketchbook like this, and they called it visual research. So they would collect things and colors and all of these sensations and feelings would come into these books in the form of collage. And these were some, kind of details. And I thought, do I remember it the right way? Was it as spectacular in 1988 as it is now? And it did live up to all my memories of it. And so I've always asked myself, how can I create like this? And how can I get my students to create like this? And so we start with a small sketchbook. When you're choosing a sketchbook, this is too big. It's too big. I bought this in graduate school in 1995. It's too big, it's empty. It's like, maybe there's 10 pages. You know where this is going, right? This is too big. This is even too big. It's too big. So what do? If I have a sketchbook that looks like this, I cut it in half. I take it and I put it on the bandsaw and I cut it. So I have two sketchbooks. And I work on them at the same time. My students, we had some, at Tulane, this was a sketchbook, and it was this size, that's too big. So we cut it in half on the bandsaw, and now we pass these out to our students so that they can, instead of for just 15 weeks, it's not a lifetime commitment, I ask them to reach for their sketchbook instead of their cell phone when they're feeling restless, which we all do, we all feel that way. So I, like many people, am intimidated by a blank page. You feel me? You intimidated,
Yes.
I don't know what to do. So I drop some lines in there, and then I start to collage with humble materials. And I'm talking about the newspaper here. Just humble materials, something that I can draw back into, not a coated paper, because that won't take my pens. You know what I'm talking about, because you're seniors, right? So I like to start there, so there is a prompt there. It's a visual prompt. I don't have to think about it, I can just start to draw. These are some scans of my small sketchbook, and when I travel, I take a sketchbook with me, a small travel size sketchbook, this size, and I draw on planes, I doodle. If you're a doodler, then why not? If you like to doodle, this is the perfect thing for you to do. Here's some others. So collage first, draw second. Let's see what we have here. We discovered this by accident in 2018 when I was teaching some graduate students at Tulane. I think I was trying to come up with a lesson on the fly. So I said, let's tear paper against a straight edge. We had some New York Times, let's start collaging, let's just tear paper. That's a useful skill, right? You're paying all this tuition money and I want to teach you how to tear paper against a straight edge. But when we tore the pieces were too big, so we wrapped them around the other side, and we love these pages in between. So they became a site for more work. This is by Claire DeVito, who was drawing back into it. So it's not intimidating as a blank page. It's just a little bit of accident that comes around the other page, and then you have a plate that you can draw back into. So work small, collage first, sketch and doodle second. This is some of our student work from this class I teach, which is 1005, Fundamentals of Design and Making. And every week I see some of my students here. I see Fiona, I see Estefania here. She has her sketchbook. Yeah, that's how big our sketchbooks are. She's taking some creative notes right now as an extra credit assignment. So I encourage our students to collage first and then draw back into it. The prompts, sometimes we don't know where to start. So we always look at, this is an amazing book. This is an amazing book that highlights graphic designers who use sketchbooks, and within each designer that is profiled is an origin story about how they got where they are. So every week we look at a sketchbook hero, and we work in their style as an homage to them. And students learn about the history of graphic design, and they do a sketchbook as we mark time in our sketchbooks. Read their small bio, work in their style, and if you want to know more, you can look at our Instagram, where we post the best of student work. And that is why I think sketchbooks are important. It's crazy, I know. It's never going to happen, but it's a good idea to entertain. And now I want to introduce Nancy Bernardo.
Hi. You know, I've been teaching for I think like 15 years now. I don't even know exactly. And I always get nervous still, like talking to people in front of a group that I don't know. But hi. So I'm also a little concerned because midterm grades came out. So I hope you're all okay. Please don't throw any like tomatoes, garbage onto the student. Anyway, okay. So I'm going to talk to you, and hopefully this will be entertaining on some level. I'm going to talk to you about what to do when you don't know what to do, and mostly it's how I approach that question or that problem, that conundrum. So so what to do, right? You get to the place and you're like, oh my God, this is the worst. Like I don't know. It's blank. And then sometimes you get to the best, right? The period, best period, and it's like the flow. But I'm starting to wonder, because I've come upon this myself many, many times, is the best the worst? Can it be the worst too? So I feel like they each kind of feed into each other. So here's like an example of like, for me, my best. And so I'm going to just show you, this is going to just scroll through, this is how I make process stuff for projects I work on. So like the last image you're going to see that stays on longer is the actual final image. And I do a lot of things where I cut out things and I try and make collages by hand, and I do a lot of things with the scanner, and I was trying to be very like postmodern, and that's the final, which was very not postmodern. So I try and like mess around a lot with different ways. These are just iterations of different book cover designs that I did, not the final. So I did vote 2020, vote for, get out the vote. And it was female, obviously, based because of the 19th Amendment. And so this is what I did. So it gives you a little bit of an idea. It's actually going much faster than I thought it would. Wait, and then this is my most recent project is from the, God, I should have done that. I was like, this is taking too long.
You can hit space bar.
So I was in charge of this online residency for The Awakening, and it was through Collage Fest, through the Collage magazine. There were 15 artists that were making collages for The Awakening. So we're putting the book together, and that's the cover design that I did, and I just took a piece of everybody's work and just made a new collage from that. And so there's like over 100 collages in the book at this point. And so that will be coming out at Collage Fest 2023. Okay, so I'm in this flow, right? And I had it was COVID then hit, and then there was a lot of time. And I had an opportunity to play around in the VSW, Visual Studies Workshop in Rochester. I had a residency there, and I had a chance to play around with their slides, magic lantern slides. And I started playing around with patterning and taking bugs apart and making new patterns from little bug pieces. I know it's weird. Some of you are like, it's weird, I know. But I want to play with patterns. And then I started taking from the Soibelman that you saw some of the images that Laurie O'Brien did. I made sheep creatures. So I made these sheep creatures, taking some of their heads and putting them on the insects. And this is my compilation of the motion I started doing during that time too, which was all super experimental. My transitions are not great, so don't judge that. But I was taking things from old movies, and I was taking just found imagery, and I was kind of playing around with different ways of making motion. I used the risograph, and I actually created a small animation and then printed the frames up. It's really a lot, very time consuming. I printed the frames up and then on the Riso printer, and then scanned them in and then put them back together so that the Riso prints could create the motion. I
started playing with sound, so it might be playing here. And then these are the sheep creatures. The sheep creatures felt like they should move, so I started kind of playing with those. With like creepy sounds, because I hadn't done sound yet. It was Valentine's Day. So it worked out perfectly. Okay, so those were just like my little motion things that I was playing around with, you know, and so that just shows you like maybe like this, like a good year in my world, you know, or a good 2 years really, where I'm like making a lot of stuff and I just feel really productive. But then there's the worst, right? The blankness, the worst. The times when you're just like, I have no ideas, I suck, I'm a charlatan, I am gonna fail school, I'm gonna get, you know, kicked out of my job, whatever, I'm not gonna meet the deadline. So I started thinking about this because, oh, I gotta go back, I can't do that yet, sorry. I was thinking about this because I've been in the worst for a little bit now, because I switched jobs and life stuff happens and yada yada. So I was like, I have a lot of the blanks, so this is where this comes in, because I started like just filming my cats, and then or taking pictures of them, and then I was like, I gotta get like a life. So what I started realizing is that now, I realize it now looking back, the worst became the best, because I agree with what Jill says with the sketchbook, because I love sketchbooks. I'm terrible at carrying them around with me, I forget them. But I was doom scrolling all the time on my phone, and someone sent me the Shuffles app, which is Pinterest Shuffles. Anybody know that one? Okay. Oh, you'll have to get it. And I was like, let me just use that. And through that, I was able to make like collages that moved because I had my phone with me, right? So I was like, okay, if you're gonna lay here and doom scroll, or you know, watch Netflix and doom scroll, or like you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. Like it just gets bad, and you're like, ugh. I might as well just like do Shuffles. Then Adobe Express also has an app as well, and I've been playing in that. So it evolved into these things. And so what it does is it's a bank of images, but you can also upload your own images. So you just have them on your phone, right? So say and since I make a lot of things, I take photographs of things. I have those in my phone. I can upload them to the app and just arrange them in the app. So it's a real easy way for me to collage somewhat quickly, but also I have no excuse now. Like I have no excuse not to make stuff. What I ended up doing was doing 28 days of collage, which is called Februlage. It's very cool. And I did 28 days with prompts, like that was fish. So there were 28 prompts and I made 28 little things. Then I started doing the 100-day project. So I would highly recommend that. Like I feel like that is one way to get you going. And even if you do like crappy things and you don't like what you have, just continue to go. Everything I make on the Shuffles I will post. So I know some of them aren't great, but I'm just like, I'll still post it because it's a little bit of accountability. But it just helps me. So I've been able to kind of take all the things I did in my processes for my design projects or design jobs and utilize them in these quick little collages.
going to now move to the second part of this awesome panel discussion. I'm going to do it every 5 seconds.
Oh, shoot. Hold. I keep forgetting that. 5?
Yeah, and then all right, so we're going to have a slideshow playing their work throughout to remind you, and it's going to be more work than you saw earlier. And I'm going to start with the first question, and then I'm going to open up to the floor if you have questions and bring the microphone to you. So I guess the first question would be, y'all met at Collage Fest, and what is it like at Collage Fest when you go, the three of you? Where did you meet, and how did it all evolve?
Well, it's a bunch of people like us. We like to cut and paste some more. But there are people who are thinking deeper about collage. I think collage is a really accessible, democratic art form, People like to cut and paste. So what are the parameters? When does it become, I think that's one of the things that we're trying to define is it accessible to everyone, or is there some aesthetic to it, like aesthetic rules?
Yeah, I think, what was the question? Just kidding. I think it's just like a lot of different people come from different places, actually internationally as well, and how they kind of approach collage, different collage techniques, which are really cool. Definitely there's a lot of discussion about getting collage into more of an academic setting, into that conversation, I would say too, because it hasn't, I think there's been times where it has, but just making that more of an academic thing is what I would say.
And just to clarify, Collage Fest happens in New Orleans every summer.
Yeah.
It's not just this summer, it's
No,
every
yeah,
summer.
so Rick Cassini, who's the person who started all this, came down to New Orleans back in like 2012 maybe, and he had just started Collage magazine, and so he reached out to me when I was living down here, and we met and talked about it, and so he's been building it since then, like Collage magazine, and then these like Collage fests, and Collage Institute now, so you can actually do like more academic things or more research, playing in the archives and making collages. So that's kind of how it's been going. So he's built this up, and he lives in two places. So he lives in New Orleans part-time and Montreal. He's from Montreal originally, so he divides his time.
I thought at Collage Fest, something that surprised me was that there were some people that were really just interested in collaging for Instagram. Like I met a lot of people like that, which was really great and interesting, a different way of thinking about it. So there's all kinds of people. Some are totally analog and interested in analog, some 100% digital. It just was kind of a range, and there's no rules. There's really no rules except that you just meet a lot of great people, and great variety of people.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really great work out there, which is which is really fun to see.
All right.
There's a question up there.
Do you want to say it out loud?
All the way. I can, yes.
Okay. I was just wondering, like, your guys' favorite places to collect materials for what that looks like for you.
Yeah, so for me, a lot of it has been old postcards. So I go to antique stores and I scour for old postcards, old photographs, whether it's from my own family, like old stuff, or if it's even from antique stores. I have used some magazine things, but I don't use that as much, or if I do, I only use a little bit of it. Books, like old books as well. So a lot of Dover Clip Art has a series of books that they sell, and it's all, you can use it for creative purposes.
I would say for me, it's I like to work with photo archives that are free, copyright free, and so I work with specific photo archives often, but sometimes it's tangible, sometimes it's digital. It always ends up being digital because I animate them, but with this Labelman archive, it was a physical photo archive, so I really enjoyed like touching the photos and looking at them tangibly, and then being able to bring them into the digital realm. But I use a lot of digital archives also, and those are more freely available to everyone in the, and there's a lot of them that you can have access to that are free. You can get all these images for free. It's a little bit overwhelming.
I like humble materials, not special materials, things like the Whole Foods grocery bag, or like bags. And this was especially important during COVID when we were all stuck at home making things. And we have a friend from Collage Fest named Janice McDonald who does a prompt every day using the junk mail from her mailbox, because they send us junk mail. They don't listen. We don't want that, but then she turns it into something. So giving yourself, it goes back to the 100-day thing. It goes back to the monthly kind of daily challenge. Use whatever you can. Use whatever is at your fingertips. Go to the grocery store. Go to the hardware store. Use the stuff in your
I mean, there is actually, so, which would be, no, there, editorial illustration would be one place. So, and because everything's becoming, there's still obviously print copies, but like one magazine that I follow a lot is The Atlantic, and they do incredible editorial illustration, and it's all collage. Adam Maida did live in Rochester, New York, and so I've met him, and he's one of the art directors. And I would say those kind of magazines, New York Times, the Book Review, or just their special pages. There's a lot of editorial illustration is the biggest thing, I would say. But I think, if you, depending on the kind of company you're working for, a studio maybe, they might be really interested in someone who does, right, that kind of look. So it's kind of about like seeing what studios do, and if you like what they do and your stuff could fit into that, that's like the type of place that you would probably want to look into talking to.
So let's just say that your next collage piece ends up in the Museum of Modern Art.
Okay.
Okay.
Down.
Why not?
Thanks, Eve.
So now that it has all this notoriety, somebody comes out of the woodwork and says, that photograph, I own the copyright to that. How do you know that the digital archives actually, that it's copyright free? You just take it on faith because they are archives and it's old? Or, because so much out there isn't copyright free. If you
So it's a very weird landscape. Yeah, do you have, you guys.
A lot of different ways to answer that, I think we really get into trouble, like with the Museum of Modern Art, if the person who owns that image knows that you made a lot of money off of that, and then you get into the weeds. But generally, we don't make money, so we don't have to worry about it. But there are, I think it's something you have to navigate, and every collection has its own rules.
Time frame, right? So 75 years is like once things get out of copyright. However, things like Life magazine, like a lot of things in Life magazine, even from back in the 30s, you have to be more careful with those because they have such a huge archive, and I feel like they're more astute to that happening. But if you actually take imagery, so that's why I use a lot of photography, or I use postcards, things that I cut a lot of that apart. So I'll use maybe just little pieces of them, and things that I don't think anyone's going to sue me for. And yeah, I make zero money, so I just do it for fun. But I think I totally lost my train of thought.
When you appropriate images, another thing to think about is to change it from the original that you found it. Especially when we look at the work of Robert Rauschenberg or Andy Warhol, how they've taken an image from the newspaper and then they've, taken it away from
Exactly.
its original context.
Right, if
So
it's
I
taken
think
out
that
of
would be
context.
an argument that would hold up in court. But I used it for a different way.
It's like, I think it's like 20 or 25%, if you use take 20 or 25% out, but I could have that flipped. I have all this information on it because I do it. So that Brad Pitt cover, I was terrified after I did that. The weird thing was I used pieces of his face, and he's seen the book allegedly, so he hasn't come after me, so I think I'm fine. It was done a while ago too. But allegedly, you can use movie stills for free, no problem, no issues, and those are all from movies. So I just got movie stills to use. So yeah, it's kind of strange.
With photo archives, it's usually clearly stated what you can do, and if you can use this, give credit, etc. It's very clear, especially digital photo archives, like the Library of Congress, for example. There's a lot of museums now, international museums, that opening up their archives, and it states clearly this is for free use for artists.
Yeah, and those archives are great, the Library of Congress, and it will say Creative Commons, it's okay. It'll just give you the different levels of how you can use the image.
Good question, though. It's something to be careful about.
So my phone has a little app on it called Screen Time that tells me every week how much I've spent on my phone. So if there were a Collage Time app, care to hazard?
How do you get this thing to turn on?
A typical week of cutting up paper and getting glue on your fingers.
And I'm very deadline oriented, so mine would come in bursts, 100% of the time, and then I take a break. So I don't know if I could quantify it that way, but yeah, I wouldn't want that app ticking on me for sure. That would stress me out. But Nancy should speak to this because you do a lot of things that prompt you digitally to force your deadlines on a daily basis.
Right, yeah, and I can't say that's always worked perfectly. This year it's working well, but I've done the 100-day project last year and it was a nightmare for me and I was miserable. And so I stopped on day 40 because I was like, this is stressing me out. So it's supposed to be something that's supposed to be a little more enjoyable. But for me right now, it's probably, and this is also, I didn't mention this in the talk, why I went onto the apps, using the apps, is that for me, I go up to my studio and that's where I cut and paste and everything's there. My studio looks like a tornado came through because it's towards the end of the school year, I just throw stuff and it stresses me out. So that's another reason why I was just use the phone. If you don't want to go, because I have that mentality of my studio has to be perfectly clean for me to work, which is not true. But in my head, I think it is. So the app helps with that. So I would probably spend maybe a couple hours a day.
Cell phone is seductive. It's hard not to touch it all the time. I see you on your cell phones. But we are makers and we're designers and we're humans and we should design and make with all 5 senses.
Your process, Jill, you just have it ingrained in your body. And I learned in graduate school that if I don't have a deadline, I won't be as creative. I really rely on deadlines in a different way than you, Nancy, but I need a deadlines kind of far apart, far away, and then I really do great. I need that pressure. Yeah. And I don't like that about my creative process, but I accept that it's true. And I admire your creative process, which feels like daily. Mm-hmm. And yours, you require some prompts. I don't know, maybe you can speak to it.
I do require some prompts, but I'm also last minute-y too. I'm very last minute. It's not good.
And I should say this is why we did the panel discussion, because I feel like everybody in here is different makers, but it's great to see 3 different processes of making and deadline-oriented, not deadline-oriented. I carry my sketchbook everywhere. I use a phone. It's kind of interesting to see the 3 different ways, and there's many more, but at least people can relate that you can be creative in so many different ways. It doesn't have to be one way.
Yeah, and hopefully that's what I think is kind of cool about having all 3 of us too, because hopefully there's something that you can kind of glean from each of us. I don't know, or maybe none of it resonates, but hopefully something does. Because I mean, no way is perfect or the right way. It's really how you work and what feels comfortable.
So my question is, how do you know when you're done with the collage? I feel like when I'm collaging, I'm just taking one idea and taking it or material and then let that inspire it to the next. So when do you let yourself, you know, turn the page?
I let mine sit and don't look at them for weeks. And then when I go back to them, I have a much better perspective, like, oh, this one is not done. Or, oh, that one, do not touch it. It's perfect. So I have to take some space away from it.
Yeah, I think when you're in that conversation with your work, if you make a mistake, you can always collage over it. Because I think collage is a really forgiving medium. So if you make, you know, you can forgive yourself for making a really bad decision and just collage over it. Like you would, there's a digital analog for that. I mean, digital parallel for that too. So, but it is a good question, because what I noticed about your work, Nancy, is the sense of humor in these little clips, these little moments of joy. So where does that sense of humor come from? Or where does that, how do you know? I think it's a good question. Well, how do you know in that little 30, is there a time limit or on the little dailies?
I think I did make some. Oh, the dailies? No, I just put stuff together and then just start making it move. And yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, yeah, for me, like as far as that question, when do I know it's done? Sometimes like the digital ones, I will start them and then I'm like, oh my God, this sucks. And then I'll just put it aside for a couple hours and then I'll come back to it and all of a sudden I'm like, boop, 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 and I'm like, yay, done. So it's weird how it works, but it's something, yeah, I don't mean to sound so like metaphysical, but I feel it inside. You know, like it's something like I just know. It's like, right? It's like you just have this like ding, done. And some of them, I mean, a lot of my work. The one good thing though, I don't know if you've noticed this, both of you, is when I look back, whenever I do these talks, I always like it because I get to look back at my work. And sometimes I'm like, the stuff that I thought really was terrible when I did it, even like cover ideas or things that never made it, you know, I look back, I'm like, oh, that was pretty cool. Like, you know, so I find stuff. So it's interesting. I think, you know, when you give it time and take time away from something, because sometimes you're just so into a project that you're just like, you think it's, you know, either fabulous or terrible. But when you step away from it and come back to it, I think you see it in a totally different way. So you can always reuse things too.
I was wondering what aspects of collage you hope to improve on.
What aspects of what?
What aspects of collage you hope to improve on in the future?
Aspects of collage to move on to in the future?
Move on,
sorry.
Sorry.
To answer, because I think it goes back to what Nancy was saying. When your work starts to not feel good and you're really struggling through this idea, you should stop and just take a break. And I've moved on. My body work is different than it was before COVID. I just can't do the work I did before. So I've had to, and that was kind of a crisis, you know, because I thought I understood what the parameters of the kind of work I want to make, but sometimes you just have to, I think it's more intuitive, and the more that you make, the more you can trust yourself.
Yeah, I agree. But improve on. Do you have anything?
For me, it's kind of
That's a good
organic.
question.
Like, it's a really good question. I feel like I get some idea in my head. For me, maybe it's conceptual. Like, the idea was about our interaction with technology and using kind of nostalgic photos. And then that idea just kind of grows and grows, and I just kind of organically go with it. A little bit like your bugs. Like, you were into these bugs and you just kept going with it. And so then there's a time when I'm just like, I don't want to see this anymore. I'm moving on. And it's very organic. And I don't know if it's improving or not improving. It's more like I've done everything I can with this theme, and now I want to wait for a new theme to come to me. And that's a scary time in creative. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I don't know what I'm going to do next, but you just kind of wait, and it always comes. Would you agree?
Thought process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Yeah, I mean, I think like for improving, I think definitely I want to like, I've been dabbling much more into motion now just because it feels like that's such a good place for my work to be in that world. So that's one area. I think I also would like to play more on like, I do humor, which I think also touches on like some social things. Like I like to think a lot about, or my work talks a bit about like women and how women are viewed and body image and all that kind of thing. So I think I might like to like explore that again, which was like what I did in grad school a lot. So yeah.
We have some questions on that side of the room.
Are we done?
Are we?
6:30, we can take like 2 more questions. 2 more.
Go ahead. Yes.
What is y'all's relationship with collage and typography?
I love it. Yeah, I really like it. Except I notice I don't do it as much as I should be. I use more image, and that's one thing that I always like about Daniela's work too, is that she always is working with type or text. I pretty much have like started doing like type, like collages on my arms now, so that's been my place to do it. But I haven't done it, a lot of it, in my work as much as I'd like to.
Someone mentioned having collage like become more academic. Could you speak a bit about that and what your meaning is?
That's
a loaded question. I think that's one of the things that we have the conference to discuss. You know, some people think collage is a bad word. I don't think that. In fact, I started a project where every time I went to a museum, I would photograph the word collage, because it was certified by the Academy. Like, this is a legitimate way to make.
Yeah.
So I think there are a lot of bad collages out there. So if you give a room of 7th graders a collage assignment, it's everything. Let's glue it all down. So I think working with restraints is what I look for in the work that I'm drawn to, the collage I'm drawn to.
It's about having that conversation where it elevates collage to a level of, painting, drawing.
Yeah.
So I think that's really where what the discussion's about, is trying to get collage elevated. And I think a lot of people do feel like it's a serious art form, a legit art form. So, but I think there are people that don't. So I think that's really I think they want to do like articles and publications for that, yeah.
I love your question, because it really does come up in the collage conversations, because there's all kinds of people doing collages. Some people, it's such a humble art form, it's accessible for everybody, children do it, yet it also has like evolved into something more serious. Like somebody asked this question in the very beginning, can you make a living off being a collage artist? Yes. And how can we make it more serious and also inviting and humble? And I think that's what the Collage Fest does. It kind of mixes all that together.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you, everybody. Great job.
Yeah.
I was like,